MAREN in full is Malawi Research and Education Network. It operates under a model which we call National Research and Education Network, which is a tested model for provision of ICT services to education and research institutions. And this model has worked quite well in a number of countries. And for us, we also decided to come up with a similar model. And the investors of Malawi and Mzuzu then decided to set up this organization way back around 2005. And the aim was that MAREN should be able to provide ICT services to the research and education institutions of this country. I think we have registered some good progress, despite having some small hiccups at the beginning, where we had some problems with startup funding, but good enough through the government of Malawi's Digital Malawi project, which is funded by World Bank. We got a grant under that project, which was purely meant to kickstart the processes of MAREN. As I said, this money was seed funding. It simply means that now that MAREN is operational, having received that funding, MAREN should be able to sustain itself by diversifying its revenue base beyond the initial services of connectivity, in which case we need to diversify and start offering other services to the educational and research sectors. Particularly, our target is the ICT services. Well, I would distinguish it in the sense that we have made some what I would call good strides, because prior to MAREN becoming operational and starting offering services to clients, in particular on connectivity, internet, as we may call it, we had institutions that were getting very, very limited bandwidth, just because the cost of connectivity in general is quite high, especially in this part of Africa. I know things are improving, but at that point, we used to have an average of $266 per unit per month of internet. And when we came on the ground, our initial offer was $85 per unit per month. And of course, we saw the commercial operators responding to that, and they started reducing their prices corresponding to what we had done. And for us, the major interest was to look at improvements in what is called the student to bandwidth ratio. At that point, each student, the average bandwidth student ratio was around about 9 kilobits per second per student, which is extremely low, because the minimum required is about 200 kilobits per second. That's up to around 2022, if I'm not mistaken. But now things have even changed, because the content on the internet has changed drastically, such that the current requirement is that per student we need to get 1000 kilobits per second. But for us, in those days, it was at 9 against the requirement of 200. And as we made some improvements, as of today, through connectivity, through MAREN, the average is at 32, which still remains quite low, but you'll see that this is close times 4 as to what was there. So we can see that with that seed funding we got from World Bank under that government of Malawi project, there has been some significant improvement, much as we still remain very low as compared to other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. So yes, improvements have been registered, but we still have a long way to go before we hit the minimum that is required per student in the education sector. As of to date, I'm sure we have connected about 45 sites, and this is at about 65 sites. So 45 clients at about 65 sites. I'm looking at sites because certain institutions would have a number of remote campuses. For example, look at Kamuzu University of Health Sciences with their campus in Mangochi, campus in Lilongwe, 2 campuses in Lilongwe, and three campuses in Blantyre. Similarly, University of Livingstonia, it has 4 campuses. So the client in that case, for example, University of Livingstonia is 1 client, but we're connecting them at 4 sites. The client with the highest capacity as of today is Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, and this one is running at 500 megabits per second. The lowest I know should be running around 5 megabits per second, which we still think is extremely low based on the student population at that site. But we are making some strides. The requirement at MUBAS, for example, with the not less than 7,000 students, it's not less than 1,400 megabits per second, and yet they're only able to procure up to 500. Yes, they have made strides, but we still think this is way too low. And that's why as MAREN, each time, because of economies of scale, when the prices reduce on the international market, for us, we escalate those to clients immediately so that using the same budget, they can get more and more capacity. So in essence, that's what I would say in terms of the capacities that we have for our clients. Connecting to MAREN is open. As of now, our license allows us to connect any institution that offers post-secondary education. So as long as you're offering education beyond secondary school, then you're eligible to connect to MAREN, irrespective of who the owners of that institution are. So this means if you are private, purely private, you can connect to MAREN. If you are a church-owned post-secondary education institution, you can connect to MAREN. If you're a public university, public college, you can connect to MAREN. At the same time, we're also open to research institutions. That's the current stand. However, to take advantage of economies of scale, we are thinking that we should even proceed to deal with secondary schools and primary schools because the government agenda is to digitalize the education sector. So we believe that MAREN is a key actor in dealing with that, since our interest is purely to provide ICT services that support education. So why should we do too much work in the higher education sector or tertiary sector and then do nothing for secondary and primary schools, because we are going to create a digital divide. So ultimately, we are going to be there for all levels of education so that we are able to assist with what the government is trying to do in terms of digitalization of the education sector. As I said at the beginning, much as other actors on the ground believe that MAREN is an ISP, but we believe we are more than just an ISP. So we don't just provide connectivity. We are expected to deal with all sorts of ICT-related services that are required by the education sector. Recall COVID taught us hard lessons. The recent Friday cyclone also taught us hard lessons. Classes can get disturbed anyhow because we over-rely on being in a physical classroom. Now, in the digital space, it's quite possible for an institution or the physical classrooms can be closed, but people can still attend education. So as MAREN, we are trying our best to look at what platforms institutions can use for teaching and learning. That's one aspect. For example, we are piloting a system called Panopto, which is a system that supports production of videos which are there to assist with teaching and learning. Similarly, we have a high-performance computing facility which researchers in the universities can use for their research, as well as the students doing all sorts of models and simulations to appreciate whatever they're doing in their field. So we have that service which is readily available. And again, related to connectivity as another add-on service, we have a service called EduRoam, which allows students and staff to roam anywhere in the world where that service runs. So in other words, if I'm a student from the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, where EduRoam is already activated, I find myself in Kenya at a university, you find I automatically connect to the internet there using the Wi-Fi at that institution just because EduRoam has been activated. So these are services that we think are adding value. Similarly, we're also working on a service called EduGain. With EduGain, it's really about access to content. So my home institution, say I'm a student from the University of Malawi, it's going to give me a username and a password. I can connect to any database in the world that has the EduGain service activated. So I don't even have to be on the university network. I can be anywhere. And you'll find that when it comes to ODEL, open distance and e-learning, students don't have to be physically on campus, they have to be anywhere. So that means they should be able to access content wherever they are. Now with EduGain, it means we're opening up the horizons for our students to be able to get the content wherever they would be. At the same time, we do appreciate for our country that the cost of devices is extremely high. So it's very hard for our students to access such devices. As MAREN, we are providing a service where we are linking up with manufacturers of hardware to be able to look at how we can buy those gadgets for the students, and then they will be able to get them at cost recovery from our end. As I said, MAREN is a not-for-profit. As such, whatever we get and charge anyone getting our services is also on cost recovery. Otherwise, if we started charging on cost, on profit basis, then we are departing from the spirit under which MAREN was established. I think we are building capacity because we had to start small. You know, it was going to be extremely expensive for MAREN to start at a very high note with all members of staff in different fields available. So when the bank gave funding to MAREN, it was like, let's start small, and the target then was connectivity. So we started based on the need at that point and the expenditures in the target institutions. And what we have seen is a big demand. And since we're a participant of a project funded by European Union called Africa Connect 3, we are a beneficiary under that project where we are even upgrading our international circuits, such that as I'm speaking today, we have a big circuit, about 5,000 megabits per second, going to be activated, a circuit running from our pop in Blantyre all the way to Johannesburg, linking up with fiber cables there that take our traffic to London as well as Amsterdam. So with that capacity, we are already seeing that first there will be a big reduction in the international price, which if we are going to reflect to the clients immediately. As such, if clients maintain the current budget, they'll have their bandwidth increased as well. So that's one aspect. At the same time, if we consume this capacity by the end of this year, we are getting another 5,000 megabits per second of circuits from the first quarter of next year. So all we are urging our clients and other interested parties to do is let them consume as much of our capacity so that we are able to procure more, because this is already funded under a project which is funded by EU. So it will be a good benefit for us. If we fail to consume the capacity that is being enabled, it means it will be difficult for us to benefit from the extra capacity that we have. Now, remember that the business of connectivity is really based on volume. So the more you get, the cheaper it becomes per unit. So if we consume the 5,000 that is coming and we get an extra 5,000, total will be beyond 10,000, it means the unit cost will not be the same. It will have lowered. So that means we'll have better prices for our clients. So in a nutshell, I would say, yes, we have capacity in terms of connectivity. On other services, our interest really has been creating partnerships with others. More particularly, we are working with institutions like Microsoft, which has just approved our application that we should be one of the distributors of their products in Malawi. So since our interest is education, it means students and staff being able to get education licenses at very, very affordable prices, both Microsoft products, Microsoft 365, Microsoft Windows, Microsoft, whatever those products you know about Microsoft, we're a partner in Malawi. Next, we have partnered with Huawei. You know, it's a big manufacturer of hardware. So I know universities, research institutions would be interested in getting maybe servers, network equipment. We are there, they can get them affordably through us. At the same time, also have a link with Cisco. So these are some of the big players that we have partnered with, and through them, we know we can deliver value to our clients. Surely, that's one of the good services we do offer, direct engineering assistance. What we do under this is that we do appreciate that not all institutions will have the same capacity in terms of ICT to deploy and support services. So what we do as MAREN is learning from what other engineers are doing. Sometimes new technologies come on board, and it's very expensive for every institution in Malawi to go and start learning about that technology. In some cases, it might take ages for them to deploy such a technology. So what we do as MAREN is we take it upon ourselves to push ourselves to the limits. We learn as much as we can, do the tests within our network, and be sure that the thing is working as one would expect. At this point, then when we are fully ready, we are able to proceed and assist our clients in deployment of such services. So what we do normally is we go on the ground, work with the client from planning to, plan, we design, we deploy up to support until the service is fully operational. For example, recently, we managed to migrate the network of the University of Malawi and the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences. We migrated from the old numbering system called IPv4 to a new numbering system, which is called the next generation numbering system for IP numbers on networks, called IPv6. So we have successfully done a direct engineering assistance by working with the two institutions on the ground, doing the planning, the designing, the deployment, and the support. So the two networks are now fully compliant with IPv6, such that if the old numbering system is switched off on the internet, the two institutions will still be able to sit on the internet as compared to other institutions which have not migrated. So that was offered under a service called direct engineering assistance. As I'm speaking, we're already planning to do one. We have received a request from Zuzu University where they want us to assist them with the activation of the education roaming service. So our team will go on the ground. That will be a direct engineering assistance. Take note that under this, we don't have a cost borne by the client, because it's one of the responsibilities of MAREN to support clients in deployment of services. As such, the cost remains on the back of MAREN. Many thanks. Actually, that's very true that not many clients are fully aware of what we do. Maybe they might have heard about MAREN, but they are not as sure as what we do. So with operationalization of MAREN, we have taken it upon ourselves to build our team so that we have all sorts of sectors within who are able to communicate with the clients. For example, on one hand, we have an office that does pure communication. So we have a communication officer who is up and running, trying to write all sorts of articles about what we do, So that's one aspect. The other aspect is we also have a business development officer who is also able to move up and down, talking to clients and would-be clients about what we're able to offer. At the same time, we are also trying to link up with even the clients, engaging them directly, where we have these regional engagements sometimes, where we just call anyone in a particular region who is related to educational issues, and then we talk to them about what we offer, what we do, so that they're able to appreciate what MAREN is all about. So surely we have not been doing much on that front, but with new members of staff on the ground now, I think the Malawians should expect to hear more and more about MAREN and what we do in this country.